This video will give you an overview of how to develop the detailed budget as part of your NCF7 full proposal application. The NCF7 budget should present the planned costs as well as the sources of funding for the full implementation period of the project. To get started, download the budget template from the NCF7 application form. It is available under section 7.2 Project Budget. The budget template includes 4 sheets. The first one has written instructions on it. The next 2 sheets are for presenting the implementation and administration budgets. And the fourth one gives a summary of the budget. We recommend that you start with reading the instruction sheet. The implementation budget and the administration budget sheets should first be filled in, and only then the summary budget can be completed. Let's first have a look at the implementation budget. The first table you'll see on the sheet, colored blue, presents the total costs of the full project. Scrolling to the right, you will see the same budget structure replicated, colored green. The green tables are the templates for the milestone-specific budgets. NCF project implementation and monitoring is done on a milestone basis. Milestones are specific points along a project timeline used to report and monitor the progress of a project. NCF projects usually have 3 to 6 milestones. The budgeted expenses should reflect the results and activities expected to be completed for each milestone. Their completion will serve as a basis for disbursements of the NCF grant. The standard template has 5 milestones. Depending on the number of milestones in your project, you should adjust the number of milestone tables in the template. The implementation budget is results-based. This means that the budget is built according to the results framework of the project and should include budget lines for each outcome, output, and activity of the project. The outcomes, outputs, and activities included in the budget should be exactly the same ones as in the project's results framework. Therefore, before starting to develop the project budget, the project's results framework structure should be clear. For more information on how to develop the results framework, see the NCF7 Results Framework Guidelines, which are available in the full proposal application form in section 7.1. The next step is therefore to customize the budget items so that they follow the structure of your project's results framework. Insert your outcomes, outputs, and activities with the same hierarchy as in the results framework. Please include the numbering of all items so that the structure is clear. Here we use a simplified example with only one outcome, output, and activity. We remove the other rows as they're not relevant for our example budget. Activities should further be broken down into inputs. Inputs are the human, financial, and material resources needed for completing the planned activities so that the project reaches its expected results. Examples of inputs include staff time and equipment. Staff input can be shown in the budget at output level, and therefore there's no need to include staff input for each activity separately. Under each relevant output, you should insert partner name and staff title for the staff members to be included. Here we use a simplified example with 2 experts, one from the lead Nordic partner and another one from the local partner. We remove the rows that are not used. Please note that consultants should not be added as project staff, but as inputs on an activity level. The other inputs should be inserted under each relevant activity. Here, we insert the inputs needed for our example activity 1.1.1. Again, the rows that are not needed are removed. Continue with filling in the unit costs for each input. For staff resources, the daily fee should be inserted. For other types of inputs, insert the most relevant unit cost. Once you have modified the budget items according to your project structure, you can continue with modifying the columns that define the sources of financing for your project. This is done under the columns NCF financing and co-financing. Under NCF financing, insert all project partners that will receive NCF financing for implementing project activities. These can be the lead Nordic partner, local partners, or other Nordic partners of the project. When inserting the names of the partners, please include a reference to the type of partner of each organization. For example, when writing down the name of the lead Nordic partner, we also include the text lead Nordic partner. Delete any unnecessary columns. Under co-financing, insert all project partners that will contribute to co-financing the project. These can be the lead Nordic partner, local partners, other Nordic partners, or financiers of the project. Financiers are organizations that provide funding to the NCF project but are not actively involved in the implementation of it. Repeat to include the same partners for each milestone table. Now that the implementation budget template has been customized to your project's characteristics, you can start filling the budget figures in it. You should do this on a milestone basis, that is, filling in the information in the green tables. Costs should be inserted for each input. Insert the number of units as a basis for each input cost. For staff costs, the number of units is the expected working days for the milestone in question. The number of units times the unit cost, which has been entered in the blue table, will give you the actual cost for a specific item. For other inputs than staff inputs, the number of units depends on the type of input. Use the same logic for filling in those costs. That is, enter a formula calculating the number of units times the unit cost. Make sure you fill in all expected costs under the correct project partner and financing mode. For example, if an input is to be financed with the NCF grant and implemented by the local partner, then the expected cost should be inserted under NCF financing and the local partner. If the input is to be financed with co-financing, then the columns under co-financing should be used. An input can also be jointly financed by several partners and/or financing modes. Repeat this for all inputs in all milestones. For presenting activity level costs, sum up the input costs under each activity. For the output level, include the sum of all activities under the output, as well as the staff costs of the output. Finally, outcome costs should be compiled of the sum of the output costs under each outcome. Make sure that each milestone's subtotals for NCF financing and co-financing are correctly summed up. Further, check that the totals of each milestone include all the relevant costs. Adjust the formula for the totals row furthest down so that it calculates only the outcome level rows to avoid double accounting of costs. Do this for all milestones tables as well as the total costs table, that is the blue table. Finally, once you have correctly filled in the expected implementation costs for all milestones, make sure that these are correctly shown in the total implementation cost table. That is, again, the blue table. Check that the formulas in this table refer to the correct cells in each milestone budget. Let's now look at the administration budget. The administration budget should include all costs related to the management of the project that can directly be linked to a specific outcome or output of the project. Administration costs include the costs of project staff in administrative or coordination roles, as well as travel costs and costs related to financial administration. The administration budget should be adjusted in the exact same way as the implementation budget. Therefore, you should adjust the number of milestones tables to the number of milestones in the project, as well as include the partner names explaining sources of financing in the columns under NCF financing and co-financing. This should be done for all milestones tables. The budget items are, however, different than for the implementation budget. The budget items are divided into 4 budget headings: administration staff, travel, financial administration, and other costs related to the project administration. Do not add any other headings to the administration budget. Under administration staff costs, insert the staff members that are related to the project management and administration. Here we use a simple example of 2 staff members. We remove the other rows as they are not relevant for our example budget. Don't forget to add the daily fees of each staff member under unit cost. Under travel costs, usually per diems, international and national flights, and local transport are included as separate budget lines. However, the necessary budget lines of each project will depend on the project's needs. You may write further explanations to a budget line to clarify a cost item, as we do in our example for local transport. Insert the estimated unit costs for each cost item. If per diems differ between partners, you can add a new line for each per diem with a different unit cost. Here you can also see an example of this. Audit costs should always be included under financial administration. Any foreseen transaction or bank fees may also be included in the budget, as well as some other financial administration costs necessary for the successful administration of the project. Please keep in mind the list of eligible and non-eligible costs when including any costs item. The list is available in the NCF 7 Project Implementation Manual. In case there are some other costs that cannot be categorized under any of the above-mentioned headings, but are still necessary for the administration of the project, you may insert these under the Other Costs heading. Again, keep in mind the list of eligible and non-eligible costs. If no other costs are to be included, you may delete this row from your budget. Enter all expected administration costs per budget line in the same way as for the implementation budget, by calculating the number of units times unit cost. Make sure you insert the cost under the correct source of financing. Fill in the costs for each milestone. Again, as for the implementation budget, make sure that the formulas for the budget headings sum up all budget lines that are included under each budget heading, and that the milestone subtotals and totals formulas include all relevant cells. Further, adjust the totals on the bottom line to sum up only the budget headings. Also make sure that all of the milestone costs are reflected in the total administration costs, that is, in the blue table, in the same way as for the implementation budget. Once both the implementation budget and the administration budget have been filled in, you can proceed to the budget summary sheet. The budget summary presents a summary of the implementation and administration costs across the milestones of the project, as well as for the project as a whole. As a first step, you should edit the budget items so that they match the budget headings in your implementation and administration budgets. For the implementation costs, only the outcome and output levels should be included, and for the administration costs, only the relevant budget headings should be included. Removing the rest of the rows will make the errors in the budget template disappear. Then you should adjust the number of milestone tables to match the number of milestones in your project. For the budget summary sheet, it is important to note that the final milestone table has a different formatting than the other milestone tables. Therefore, make sure that you use the one indicated in the table for your last milestone. Adjust the columns referring to sources of financing so that the correct project partners and financiers are included under the NCF financing and co-financing columns for all tables. This should be exactly the same as in the implementation and administration sheets. No numbers should be inserted manually to any of the tables in the summary sheet, but instead the numbers should be fetched using formulas referring to the correct fields. This is to ensure that all costs in the budget are summed up in the summary sheet. Create these linkages across the tables and check that they include the correct budget items. Apart from the implementation and administration budget costs, the budget summary should include contingencies. Contingencies are budgeted funds which are not earmarked for any specific activity or input, but can be used to cover unforeseen costs that may occur during the project implementation. The contingency should be at least 5%, but no more than 10% of the total project budget. The contingency should be added only on a total project cost level, that is in the blue table of the budget summary. The fields that are not colored gray can be used for defining the source for the contingency. The contingencies can be covered either with a combination of NCF funds and co-financing or with NCF funds only. Below the blue table, you will find some additional fields with co-financing calculations. The objective of these fields is to get an overview of the co-financing and NCF financing shares of the project, as well as co-financing shares for each partner type. Please check that the formulas correctly calculate the shares for your project budget and adjust when necessary. For example, for the Nordic co-financing share, all the co-financing for partners registered in the Nordic countries should be included. Under the milestones tables, that is the green tables, you will find fields for defining the advance payments to be requested from NCF ahead of a milestone. Enter the needed advance under each relevant milestone in the field Advance Payment for Milestone. Marking an advance payment under a milestone means that you will receive the funds before that particular milestone. So, for example, marking an advance payment of 50,000 euros for milestone 1, you will receive the funds at the start of the project, that is at the start of milestone 1. When you have marked an advance payment for a milestone, the fields under it will then be automatically calculated. The field Advance Payment versus Total Milestone Cost will show the share of the advance payment compared to the full milestone costs. A general rule is that a maximum of 75% of a milestone's costs can be covered by an advance payment, and therefore you should make sure that the number shown in the field is no larger than 75%. The field Advance Payment versus Total NCF Grant will show the share of the advance payment compared to the full NCF grant. One advance payment can never be more than 20% of the total NCF grant, and therefore make sure that the number in this field is no larger than 20% for any milestone. For the final disbursement, at least 20% of the NCF grant shall be reserved, and therefore advance payments cannot be made for the final milestone. Under the final milestone budget sheet, you will see that the share of the NCF grant is calculated automatically. Please make sure that this number is at least 20%. Finally, make sure that all of the milestone costs of the budget summary are reflected in the total project costs, that is, in the blue table, in the same way as for the implementation and administration budgets. When you consider that the budget has been finalized, save a version of it in your files and upload it to the Smart ME application form under section 7.2.